put a bounty on them, they'll have it coming from cops, cartels, and every gang in the city.
The bounty is dead or alive.
Now I take the 3 in the front, you take the 6 in the back.
Welcome to DBL. Bad Boys Ride or Die was a big hit at the box office this weekend. The movie opened with an estimated $56 million in the U.S. and nearly $49 million internationally. Will Smith enjoyed the movie with fans and made some surprise appearances in theaters. So with the film's early success, many are wondering if Will's redemption is complete 2 years after the Chris Rock slap at the Oscars. Do you think that it's time for his redemption arc? Are we here?
Whether I think it's time or not, I think the people have voted with their wallets.
But do you think so? I'm curious. As someone that's a true comic, you had Chris Rock's back. We all did. But now do you feel that Will Smith over time has paid the piper?
I do. Yeah, I do, because I think there's so much that can be done with that situation. Will did seem, even though I had some issues with his apology, he did seem like he would try to make amends. And Chris Rock was like, I'm fine. We don't need to do that. And that's also a response as well. Chris Rock went on to make, I believe, one of the biggest checks ever from Netflix. And Will Smith appears to be back at the box office. So after this terrible thing, we can either dwell in this for the next 20 years, or we can move on. That was terrible and disgusting. Okay, I hope you guys continue to have great careers, and this is the best case scenario. People enjoy Chris Rock, people enjoy Will Smith.
Erica?
I mean, I said that I believed that this was going to be a successful movie. I mean, there are people who are real, true cult following fans of this franchise, and they were excited to see this. In terms of the Will Smith court of public opinion situation, I think that people have really made up their minds whether they were going to forgive and forget, or they're going to harbor resentment against him from now until eternity. In terms of like the Chris Rock camp, there are still very famous people who have spoken out and made jokes at Will Smith's expense or comments at Will Smith's expense in order to show a side of solidarity with Chris Rock. So I feel like however you're feeling, this movie might somehow bleed into both camps, and that's got to feel like a win for Will Smith.
I think it's a huge win. Huge win. Big opening for the box office. It's been a bit sleepy. And he is the summer jam of the summer. You want a Will Smith movie to go into summer with, July 4th, right? But I spoke to someone here who works here who saw the movie. Oh. And they said there's one scene in which he's having a panic attack and he slaps him, Martin Lawrence, and and then he slaps him like 5 more times. And it's it really is a wink, right? It's an Easter egg to make fun of it. That's what you need to do. You've got to somehow diffuse it with the nostalgia of Bad Boys. Martin Lawrence helps. This franchise helps. Everything is helping him. It's not just him alone in Emancipation that did terribly. It's the right timing. So this to me is a big win for Will Smith, and I think he's back. Yeah.
Jeff, you want to see it?
Yeah, I'm a fan of the franchise. I'm not a fan of what he did or sticking up for it in any way, but just real quickly, all my lessons I've learned in my life were from bad things I've done or things that I regret, even things I've done a long time ago and I still dwell on. Those are the biggest learning moments for me. We act in this society like nobody ever does anything wrong and everyone on the internet's perfect. That's not reality, okay? My kids are going to make mistakes, and it's up to me to put those things in my past, move on to make myself a better father and help them out. So if he'll wear this as a scarlet letter to the rest of his career, whether you choose to forgive him or not is up to you.
And I honestly believe he's remorseful. I do.
Yes.
I think he was remorseful the second it happened.
I do too. Yeah. And so I'm hoping he has this comeback. I really am. All right. Last month, Jerry Seinfeld made headlines for saying that TV comedy has suffered due to the, quote, extreme left and PC crap, and people worrying so much about offending other people. Now, his Seinfeld co-star, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, is weighing in on what he said about political correctness. In a recent interview with the New York Times, Julia said, quote, it doesn't mean that all comedy goes out the window as a result. When I hear people starting to complain about political correctness, to me, that's a red flag because it sometimes means something else. I believe being aware of certain sensitivities is not a bad thing. Tori, this is something you often say.
Yeah, I think that some people get upset when you're too PC, and I understand that a pendulum has gone very far, and in some ways, as a comic myself, or was a comic myself, I understand that it interfered with comedy. Sacrifices have to be made, though, when a social culture and climate shifts. seismically. It can't just be a little shift. You have to explain the marginalized people have this much pain that you change, 330 million people's point of view in America? So yeah, things got sacrificed. It overcompensated. I would rather have overcompensated than let those marginalized people feel like they still don't have a voice. And what I think Julia Louis-Dreyfus is saying is, if you're still upset about the PC culture, is there things you want to be saying that you can't because they're hidden with either misogyny or bigotry or racism, because you think that should not have been sacrificed in this cancel culture moment. I think it was worth it to sacrifice for 2 years of overcompensation.
Well, see, that's what I don't understand about this, is because of podcasts and these kinds of outlets not being affiliated with places that have to put commercials next to them, you're not really beholden like you used to be like, hey, we can't say that thing about women because we have Dove as a sponsor. Like now, if you're any podcast, you can be on the edge of like being deplatformed and still make a lot of money and be able to have comedy, because you can tell a venue, we're going to put 300 butts in those seats, and the venue's like, I don't care what y'all are doing on that stage, check cleared. So I think Seinfeld's kind of telling on himself a little bit that the jokes that he's saying aren't working anymore. It used to be a joke where I'm going to take my wife somewhere she's never been, like the kitchen.
Right.
Now it just like, did you hear the silence? It's not PC, it's whack.
I heard a few laughs. I heard a few laughs.
Yeah, people.
Well, a lot of people, last time we covered Jerry Seinfeld, a lot of people are still upset that he dated like a 17-year-old.
Yeah, Shoshana.
Right.
Yeah,
so I think a lot of people are, she was still in high school at the time, and he was like 36 years old. Can you imagine? So I think some people, and I didn't even know that. I watch Seinfeld every night. I love Seinfeld. But to see that, I was like, oh, that is weird. If like, one of our 36-year-old producers came in with a high school student like, this is my new boo, I'd be like, oh.
And the social climate has shifted.
But you kept watching Seinfeld.
I just learned this when we talked about him last week.
Oh, but have you watched it since?
I have, but it did make me see him a little differently.
Well, I think there's truth in everything that everyone's saying, and I mean, surprise, surprise, that is quite possible. For what you're saying is, I think that's where a lot of people get hung up on things, especially like in a Jerry Seinfeld situation. And I do have respect for Jerry Seinfeld and what he's been able to do in entertainment. But I think some people need to let go of the fact that like what worked 20 years ago just doesn't work today. It's not that people are overly PC. Sometimes it might have to do with political correctness. Sometimes it just doesn't land. You can't make people laugh at things that they laughed at 20 years ago. You also can't jump into someone's head and decide why they're not laughing. If Jerry Seinfeld can do that and say that because Jerry Seinfeld has enough money to last his children, his grandchildren, all of that. But for the average person who keeps fighting this idea that because people aren't responding to them the way that they believe they should be responded to, it's because we're woke and it's been politically overcorrect. Maybe you're just whack in this moment. Yeah. Maybe you're not a whack individual all the time, but you're super whack right now, and that's all we're saying. There's room for that.
Jeff, let's get Jeff in here.
Okay,
Jeff.
go ahead. I was just going to say, Erica said something one time. You said you were excited to show Anthony a movie that you loved 25 years ago.
Yes.
And you ever do that for a friend? Like, this is hilarious, and you put it on, and it's like slow and not that funny. And you're
it was super slow.
You remember it differently.
And, and I was like, and he looked at me like, you think this is funny? And I'm like, I remember this being hilarious.
Right. It's not that you're woke. It's just 25 years later. Sorry, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm on the other side from you guys. I'm more on Seinfeld's side, but I love Julia Louis-Dreyfus. She's amazing, and there is truth in what she said. We needed to correct some things, and I'm all for that. We've overcorrected and went way past that line. And here's a perfect example of what people are really feeling, because people are scared to tell you these days because we've corrected so much that their job is on the line. And the one thing that stands out to me is the Tom Brady roast. It's #1 all time on Netflix. It was a breath of fresh air. People aren't really insulting those people. It's all in comedic fun. And everyone there laughed at each other's jokes that were below the belt and all that. And that's what America wants. They don't want this corrective stuff. They want to correct problems that are wrong, and I think we've done that. But we are so far past the line that you can't even laugh anymore. How dare you? Everyone's a victim. Everyone's offended. It takes conversation off the table, because I'm not having that conversation with you if no matter what I say, I start with I like Seinfeld, you're going to be offended and victimized by that statement. Then we're not having the conversation.
You're right. No, you're right, especially when it comes to comedy. Okay, so Celine Dion shared her stiff person syndrome diagnosis with the world back in 2022. But in a new preview clip from an upcoming interview, she reveals why she decided to come forward with the diagnosis after dealing with health issues for 17 years. Watch.
We did not know what was going on. My husband as well was fighting for his own life. I had to raise my kids. I had to hide. I had to try to be a hero. Feeling my body leaving me, holding on to my own dreams, the burden was like too much.
Too much to bear.
Lying to the people who got me where I am today. I could not do it anymore.
Wow. And the whole interview, well, it airs tomorrow on NBC, and she continues to talk about being a caretaker.
Yeah. I got to be honest with you guys. If you are a caretaker, and I know so many of you are watching right now, you are ignoring problems in this moment. What hurts? Your back, your head, something's not right with your stomach, and you have ignored it because the priority is the other person. This happened to my family. It can happen all the way and be a fatality. I want you to give yourself some courage, and I want you to be pushy. Being pushy is not comfortable, but you're pushy for the other person. Advocate for yourself. Advocate for yourself. It's so vitally important.
And thank you for saying that.
Yeah, yeah.
17 years.
Yeah.
I couldn't
Can you imagine?
It's and sadly, Sam, I can. Just because when you take on that role as a caretaker, there's a part of you that has to sacrifice a large part of your life, depending on how, depending on the needs of the person that you're caring for. And if this is a person that needs to be bathed, a person that needs to have their dignity remain intact as you help them use the restroom,
You give it up.
These are hours and hours of your life, and as you're focusing on them, Erica, what happens to you? What happens to even the times you used to fantasize about, oh, should I go to Hawaii? Or like, hey, I think the guy at work is cute.
disappear.
All those things that you don't have those thoughts anymore because you're like, 5:30, Al's got to have his medicine. 6 o'clock, he needs to be in bed. And after a while, I think your life can disappear, and
then you feel guilty.
You can
feel
neglect
guilty
yourself.
because
Absolutely.
yeah, because then you have resentment.
Yes.
And then you're like, why
And
do
then
I
you're
feel
angry.
resentful?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Please give your permission right now to be pushy for your health. Please.
Thank you, Tori.